Hello viewers, welcome again to another legal webinar series from Jogu and Associate Advocates. So we had a guest last week and there was a little bit of tiff-taff when it came to the introductory bit, but allow me to do this introduction and introduce the guest who we had last week, who was Lucy Githaiga. So Lucy Githaiga, allow me just to give you a little bit of background. This is a lady who has been through a journey where learning from her own financial mistakes to making it through, and also within the journey helping others overcome financial mistakes and move from monuments, or what we call those financial mistakes that you undertook, to now movement. So this webinar series that you're going to be watching is basically Lucy's journey. She really informs us that by the age of 32, she had already even gotten her own house. At 26, she had financial discipline all the way to about age 32. And at this point, she says she lost her head. And it got to a certain point in her life, she started having a hunger for more, but along the way also having a lot of financial mistakes. I hope that this particular webinar is going to be an eye-opening experience for you, not only just to relate to her journey or listen to her journey, but also understanding that mistakes will always be there. The question has always been, what do you do after the mistake? So Lucy does help other people who have been through this journey, and she's going to be explaining to us all that. Enjoy the webinar. Thank you.
Where nothing matters except doing life. It's really, a decade, which I call a floating decade, that most people go through from the age of 30 to the age of 40. But of course, it's not everybody who goes through that, but a majority of us sort of find themselves in a decade of just floating around, what I call the kipepeo dance. And so I was just like everybody else. I found myself in such a decade for about 10 years. So enter age 32, and I entered another season called, where I was completely restless. I think when people hit 40, you have heard a lot of times when people say, life begins at 40, but even as life begins at 40, there's always, certain critical life questions that sort of begin to emerge. You begin to question a lot of things. And so that was my time. That was me at 42. And that became a season of restlessness. And for the next 5 years, I made significant and unimaginable mistakes with money. I was completely out of my mind, to be honest. When I look back, I was digging holes all over the place. I dug very many holes. I dug a gemstone hole. I dug a gold mining hole. I dug a forex hole, which was the biggest of them all. I dug an online work hole, and on and on. I mean, there are so many holes that I dug. And so that season of 5 years was like that whole digging season that almost took me to prison. If you read my book, you would understand why I almost went to prison out of that, because then I was involved in a forex scam, which ended up making me lose about 8 million of my own money. And then I also had brought others into this big thing, who ended up losing about 11 million as collectively as investors. I talk about this story quite often because it was a big thing for me. So in that season, I was left badly bruised in terms of the money that I lost, but also in terms of my reputation, because at that time, not only, I had brought in people from church, from my neighborhood, from work, my colleagues. And so I went through different things in terms of judgment, in terms of just rejection, because everybody thought I was a thief. I actually woke up, I think, on the 16th of December, where the story about me having been a thief in this camp was prominent in the Nation newspaper. But anyway, that was a season that was quite challenging for me in terms of losing the money, but also losing my reputation, in that whole time. Then, 5 years on, enter 47, and reality hits me that I was only one paycheck away from real trouble. And at that time I was in debt, of course. I had no savings or any investments that I would actually stand on if I had lost my job. And by the way, at that time, during that season, I went through a series of disciplinary sessions at work, because in this Forex scam, what I had done is that I had invited people, some of who were our partners, and therefore it became, it was of course viewed, and indeed it was, a conflict of interest, having been a country director, but then inviting both staff and staff of partners that we support because we are a donor organization. That of course became a big issue. I was actually declared a global threat in my organization. So I went through a series of disciplinary actions, but fortunately, because then I was quite prudent in terms of whistleblowing about this issue. When they did their investigations, they sort of cleared me. But if I had lost my job at that point, definitely I would have slid into a very difficult space. So coming off on my 47th birthday, I needed a radical shift, and yes, I became very, very radical in terms of, the things that I needed to do. And so that is what then defined the movement that I have been on during the last 3 years. And I think that's why I qualify myself to actually speak about breaking monuments for movement, because I was able to actually bring down my monuments and chase, and I chose movement at that point. So we'll be talking about monuments, and we will be talking about a space I call the in-between, and then the movement, in that order. The moments that we're going to be talking about are really about the financial mistakes that we find ourselves, engaging in from time to time. Now, one of those moments when it comes to money is doing nothing or very little financial mistake. You are earning money, whether it is from your law firm, whether it's from your employment, but you're doing nothing. I mean, nothing in the sense of nothing significant or nothing that would be useful in terms of building your future, your financial future. So that's a mistake that many times we find ourselves. And I think, as I have said in my story, for me, the floating decade of, between 30 to 40, that was me, doing nothing or very, very little. If I was to just look back and ask, okay, so exactly what did I do other than kukula, what I call kukula tauta, all the money that I had. Then of course there is the other moment of club YOLO. I mean, you live only once. It's a financial mistake because you hear somebody shouting YOLO, you also shout YOLO, and before you know it, you are packing all these islands of YOLO, and sometimes it's nothing. There is absolutely nothing wrong with enjoying life, because anyway, as they say, we are here to experience the moments of joy and the moments of life. But then again, there's also the moment of remembering there's today and then there's tomorrow. Then, of course, there's the financial mistakes related to relationships when it comes to issues of love and money. And this is a big one for women, a big one for men, but perhaps much, much more bigger for women, because for us women, we are emotional beings. A lot of times we make decisions based upon the emotions of what we are feeling, or maybe even what we are thinking, but a lot of times it's the heart that then follows the head. Sometimes where emotions are concerned and where love is concerned, it's very likely that we can make very significant financial mistakes. I see a lot of conversations, even online, where you have either a loved one, a spouse, where you have, oh, nichukulie kalon, oh, nifanyie hivi, without necessarily asking, inaenda pande gani and what is going to happen, so we have that, whether we are in a marriage situation or whether we are single, in terms of, whoever it is, that our other, the significant other, because then we are also embroiled in the emotion of love. Many times we have seen women, but also men, making significant mistakes around, because of this thing called love and money. And whether you find yourself, falling in a narcissistic relationship that then gets you completely financially abused. You guys are, of course, people who preside over, divorce matters, separation matters. The story when it comes to issues of relationships and money. And so I think for me, this is huge and big for women. And I also found myself actually sliding in this mistake, because not because of the love and money, but because of the ideas, and it could be love and money, because it could be not necessarily from maybe a loved one who is like a significant other, but it could also be from relatives. And I think I have heard you guys talk about I think you did say that you had a conversation about black tax, and we have all heard these stories of how sometimes even relatives can rip you off anyway. The other mistake, of course, is business related. You might have wrong partners, and you guys who are in law firms, sometimes you might team up with somebody who is not completely, a partner who is not the right partner for you to develop and grow your business. And it could just be, just getting involved in a wrong business. For me, I have talked about the holes that I dug, my gold mining hole, my gemstone hole, all these holes that I dug, they were just mistakes that were related to businesses, because then I did take time to actually ask myself, what is the business that I can do and what am I good at? Right now, as I continue to develop my speaking and coaching business, I know for a fact that this is what I am created for. This is what really like suits me best. So in terms of growing a business, then I know I have sort of nailed it. But before then, it was, putting money all over the place and digging holes in different places. Investment related mistakes, I think we all know this one, where you put in money in something, it doesn't quite yield anything. You start a building, it just becomes a white elephant, it's just there. Then of course, the crisis of debt, we know that there are very many people who are struggling with the crisis of debt, and it begins with one debt, then it continues to mount into another one and to another one, and before we know it, we have a big moment of where we are completely captured by the crisis of debt. Spiritual related financial mistake, we've just been hearing the stories of Shakahora, and it may not be Shakahora of people people starving to death. It could be that you are in a Shakahora where you are draining yourself financially, completely. I have heard of a story of, I think, a prominent lady lawyer who actually sold her property to give to a pastor, to a spiritual leader. I have, the wife of my husband's cousin, she was a TSC teacher, a graduate teacher, and she would take all her salary to the pastor every month, and then she should be left borrowing bus fare from the husband. So we know that these are issues that happen, because then again there is the emotion that is there. So again, here we know we have had these stories. Not paying attention to money, the kipepeo dance, I call it the kipepeo dance, where you're not paying attention. It's a resource, and remember, we are called to be stewards of the resources that are at our disposal, but we are not necessarily doing what we need to do. And so because we are not paying attention, we find ourselves, years have gone, and like I said, my 10 years of kipepeo dance just happened just like that, and you're like, whoops, what happened? So not paying attention to money. Monkey see, monkey do. Is also another moment. I see somebody with a big car, with a whatever it is that I see, and I just say, okay, monkey see, monkey do. That's another moment. So all these become moments that we engage in that end up sort of sucking the money that we have, but also robbing us of the opportunity to take charge of our financial future. So those are moments that happen. Now, what then happens when we have all these moments? We then build monuments, and when we are building those monuments, what happens? We are stuck. We are stuck because of everything that happened, all those moments and all those mistakes that we have done. We are stuck. We complain. We become zombies. I don't know if you have seen people who, because of all the crisis of all the mistakes that they have done, they are completely unable to move forward. They just become zombies. They are paralyzed, totally paralyzed, and they even get into lifestyle diseases because they can't do anything. They are angry. If in my case, I remember. When I was involved in this scam, for the first months before I could, gather myself to move, I was so angry with the co-director who took us into this whole thing. So I was angry, and I believe that there are many people who get angry with themselves, but also angry with others. They are shocked. We are so shocked and wondering what happened. How could I have found myself in such a situation? We get disillusioned. And in the process, we also dig holes. So we are trying to dig holes as we escape others. In my case, I remember when I got into that forex scam, and I and others lost the money. I said, maybe I should just go and learn Forex. And believe me or not, I took a loan of 3 million from the bank. I flew to Dubai. I went, Sijui learned. It actually cost me about 3.5 million. Came back, started trading with Forex, hoping that, something would yield. And I ended up digging even deeper holes as I was trying to escape, from that other hole. So you end up digging more holes as you're trying to escape others, because you're trying to see, how do I manage, how do I rescue the situation? It's a monument, it's a moment, or it's another monument that you're building over there. We lose concentration in our business and our daily lives. And that is how then we find ourselves sliding into destructive behavior. Some people take on the bottle, others go into drugs, others decide, you know what, I am going to just be not doing anything, So that destructive behavior then becomes what defines you. And you are unable to follow through any goals, because as long as you're stuck in a monument, it's difficult for you to follow any goals. We forget who we were before the moments. Before those moments that I have talked about in the earlier slide, you sort of, because you're so zombified in these monuments that you have created, you sort of forget who you are. You can easily slide into a very difficult space. And so we know that the moments that we in can actually then result into monuments. But there is hope in something I called the in-between space. If you are convinced that you do not want to get stuck in the monument, then you move very quickly into what I call the in-between space. Now, the in-between space is that lonely corner where you're processing. It's like the corner where you're processing things. It is a space of self-forgiveness. It's also the space of forgiving others, so that if there were mistakes that happened on account of your own actions, or on account of other people's actions that were in your lives, then you begin to say, you know what, I am going to forgive them, and I am going to forgive myself. In my case, I had to forgive this gentleman. And I remember, being invited even on the Jeff Koinange show and saying, you know what, I have forgiven this guy totally. And it was only after forgiving myself and forgiving others that I was able to transcend into the place of movement. It's a space of self-reflection. You reflect and you sort of go through the moments of your reflection, and you also get a full picture of where you are. If it is a mess, if you're in that deep mess, you sort of get to the place of saying, okay, this is what it is. Iko hivi sasa, there is nothing hapa ndipo tuko, It's the space of reminding yourself of who you are, because before the moments you were someone, of course, before you slid into those moments of the mistakes, but then you sort of begin to remind yourself of who you are. It's a space where you set yourself apart from all the noise, because there can be a lot of noise. In my case, because then it was a public issue with the disciplinary actions at work, with condemnation and judgment in my church. And by the way, at that time, I was actually a leader in my church. I was the vice chair of my parish. I was the chair of the Catholic Women Association in my parish. So there was a lot of judgment, and I needed to just step out of that space, even from the neighborhoods, just stepping out from all the noise, so that then I can concentrate on building the movement that I want to build. It's the space of isolating lessons. I mean, you look back and you're like, okay, what lessons can I draw? You're not necessarily looking back so that you can beat yourself, but you're looking back to actually say, what lessons can I do? It's the place of tremendous replanning. Because you have made all those moments and all those mistakes, you're like, okay, I think it is possible for me to replan. It's a space of bold decisions. You make certain bold decisions that nobody might know, no one else understands except you, but they are bold in nature. It's the space of the bold decision to pivot, because pivoting gives you the opportunity to say, you know what, I was looking in this direction. Now I've got to pivot and look in another direction. And this is the place where you finally break the monument. When you have been in the space in between, and you have made the decision to pivot, it is the place where you finally break the monument. You stop zubifying you stop looking at the monument and getting stuck at that moment of the monument, and you begin to now move in the space of movement. So when you get to the place of movement, what happens? You look at where you are and you're realistic about it. No blamers. And when I talk about no blamers, you are completely not blaming nobody. You are blaming no one. if it was a love relationship that got you in some mess, you sort of don't blame. Remember, in the place of in between, you have already forgiven. No shamers. You are completely, you're not ashamed. You are able to actually say, by the way, this is what happened to me. And I think for me, that's what gave me the power, because I remember it was somewhere around October of 2018. I had come from my morning walk. And at that time, everything was so heavy in my mind, as in it was so heavy. I sat outside my compound. I can actually see the tree under which I sat. And I told my daughters, come, bring that phone. I want to record a video and just tell these guys what it is and what it is and what it is. I mean, you stop feeling ashamed. You stop getting ashamed of everything that happened, and you own the story. As a matter of fact, I say you stand on the story. You don't sit in the story, because if you sit in the story, it sort of sits on you, and it sort of it becomes a mountain. But when you stand on the story, you are no longer ashamed of anything that happened, because you have forgiven yourself, you have forgiven others, and the only thing that you do is what we call only claimers. And only claimers means you are only claiming your future. You're claiming the desired future. You make a realistic plan on how you deal with the situation. Yeah, it is. This is how I am going to deal with it. I remember for me, it was, all these guys who are, after my head. I mean, they would have cut my head for sure. And I was realistic, and I said, you know what, guys, I am going to pay you. I don't know when, and I don't know how. That's it. So you become realistic about how you deal with the situation. You develop a clear vision of the future that you are working towards, because clarity of the future is what gives you the energy to be able to move. It's what drives you. It's what gives you that ability to do the movement. You set milestones and establish timeframes for the achievement of those milestones. I remember when I made a decision to write my book, I said, I started writing that book, actually, I think on my 40s. I mean, after that, what I call my Damascus moment on the 47th. And I said, I am writing this book, and a year from now, I am going to launch this book. And that's what happened. I started that book somewhere in October of 2020. And on 30th October of 2021, I launched the book. So you set milestones, you set timeframes, and you carry on and you move on. You find an accountability partner to keep you accountable. Because again, you want to really be on track. Now, whether that's going to be a group, or whether it's of your most trusted inner circle, or you're going to get a coach to help you navigate through the journey, you do that, and you do that on purpose. Okay. And as you continue to do that, you also celebrate your milestones and your growth. Every time you achieve a milestone and a growth level, you celebrate, so that then you can continue to have the energy to continue moving. You anchor yourself on the 3 M's of progress. What are the 3 M's of progress? Your mind, your mouth, and your motion. What does that mean? You sort of flood your mind with where you're going. You flood your mind with the desired future. You flood your mind with the plans and everything that you're planning, your goals and everything. That's what becomes your preoccupation in terms of your mind. You confess your mouth, because what is confessed becomes, we say that the power of life and death lies in your tongue. So you confess that you're a victor. You continue to just declare and affirm that your movement is what you're owning. And then you do the motion. The motion is actually now the movement, because at the end of the day, whatever it is that your mind tells you and your mouth, those are the two things that help you to decide whether you're moving forward or not, or you're not moving forward. I mean, if you look at the current situation where we are at, everybody is talking about how bad things are. At every corner you turn, you hear how, things are bad. There's confessions of how things are bad. And some people have become completely paralyzed, because they have made it in their mind, they have concluded in their head that things are bad, they have confessed that things are bad, and therefore they have no energy to make to move in any possible direction. They just get paralyzed. I mean, it's like they are building a movement. And I mean, a monument, so to speak. So you need to be able to use the 3 M's of progress, so that you can be able to, move in the direction that you have desired. You take charge again. And you take charge of your money, because we are talking about money, and you sit on the driver's seat and you say, I am in control, and you stay on the ride. Now, if you fall for whatever reason, because life happens, you wake up, you dust yourself. And we are saying that movement is the place of getting your life back. You have broken the monuments. Remember, you have sort of destroyed those monuments so that you can take charge, and you're now on the move. And movement is what then defines you. You are no longer defined by the things of the past, and you're now ready to effectively work on the 4 M's of money. And I talk about the 4 M's of money as the first M is make money, the second M is manage money, the third M is multiply money, and the fourth M is mesh money. It is unlikely for you are unlikely to be able to work on the 4 M's of money if you're stuck in the monuments, so you've got to get unstuck and move away from your monuments so that you can begin to make the money. Because if you're going into your business every day when you're feeling stuck, it's impossible for you to actually think straight about how do I grow my law firm, how do I grow my business. If you're growing in career, how do I grow in career? It's difficult. So it is only after you have broken your monuments that you can be able to now effectively work well with money. Otherwise, if you're still stuck, you're going to be digging holes upon holes upon holes. All right. There are 2 mindsets when it comes to breaking monuments for movement. One is a mindset that is focused and stuck on the past, such as we know the story of Lot and his wife. Lot's wife decided, as they were running, because they had been told to run, she was remembering what was happening in Sodom, maybe the things that they had left behind. So there is always this 2 mindset of looking behind, and one that is stuck on the past, and a mindset that is focused on the future. I would imagine that for Lot and his wife, even if Lot had, I'm sure when Lot's wife turned, she must have screamed, "Wow!" by seeing the fire and that was burning at in Sodom. But Lot did not even listen. Never mind that this is my wife screaming, because he must have heard him screaming, but he decided to just continue to move forward. So that mindset of moving ahead and the mindset of being stuck in the past, those are 2 completely different mindsets. And movement is really about a future focus, while monuments are a focus on the past and what happened in the past. Now, a future focus requires a different set of values, and you have to build the values and a mindset of I can, and no matter what attitude, that no matter what is going to be happening, no matter what surrounds me, I can, and I am continuing to move and to be on the move. And whatever you had in the past, remember, whatever you had in the past was built in a present moment. Those moments that we've talked about, they were built in a present moment. So your present moment is therefore what you have to build the future. And that only comes with clarity of the kind of future that you want to build. Because everything you're building today is you're building a future. So you're constantly in a building moment. So whatever it is that you're building, it's the present moment is really critical for you. And you can choose to use your present moment to keep you glued on the monuments of your past moments, or you can choose to direct your energy of your present moment in the business of the movement of building your desired future. Now, remember, you can't move forward while looking backward. It's not possible. Even when you're driving a car, you drive a car looking ahead. Yes, you might, of course, glance at the rear mirror so that you see whether you're overtaking, what is happening. But you never just look at the rear mirror and forget looking forward. So you're looking forward, but glancing at the rear mirror. And that glancing of the rear mirror is really just the lessons, so that you can keep forward. And you will stagnate and freeze like Lot's wife. And then we can come by and see the monument of who you have become because you chose to focus on your past. I know there are people who that they were probably doing well. They were probably doing great in their law firms. They were probably doing great in their businesses. Then something just happened and it brought them down. And we come to see they're like a monument. Come and see what happened to Nani, so you become a monument. And so for you to break, you have to break the monument so that you can move, so that you don't have the opportunity to come and say, Ebuku Jenny, come and see what became of so and so. And you have to reach, when you read the story of Lot, you have to reach for the hills, because when Lot was told, Ondoka, Ebu, Enda, we want you to go up to the hills and don't look back until you get to the hills. And of course, Lot wasn't quite confident with himself, and he was saying, no, I can't reach the hills, it's too far. I can only reach the little town of Zoar. And so what I am saying is, even if you're telling yourself that your feet cannot get yourself to the hills and you can only get to the little town of Zoar, just get moving, because that is where energy is. Now, what is the dominant conversation that is going on inside you? Is it a conversation of being stuck at the monument of your past moments, or is it a conversation of your desired future? Remember, energy moves where energy goes. Your life moves in the direction of your focus. If your focus is on the past, that is where you will be building monuments and monuments. But if your focus is on the future, then of course you will be building towards the future. And therefore, I encourage you to change your focus so that you can break those monuments and direct your energy towards the movement. Now, I want to conclude this section by saying that by quoting a gentleman called Darren Hardy, who has written something around choices. Now, the life we end up having is an accumulation of all the choices we have made. By the way, if you look at your life today, it is a result of the choices you made yesterday. It's a result of the choices that you made earlier. And so even your tomorrow is going to be an accumulation, is going to be the result of the choices that you're making today. Our choices can be our best friend, but they can also be our greatest enemy. So when they are our greatest enemy, it's about the moments that we make, those moments that we are talking about, the choices that you make that then become an enemy to our money and to the way we manage our finances. And choices are at the root of our results. Whatever results we have today, tomorrow, yesterday, they are all a factor, and they are all a subject of the choices that we make. You make choices, and then your choices make you. Yeah. And by the way, don't choose at all, and you have just made a choice to become a passive receiver of whatever comes. So choices are very important, so to speak. And I think I would end there. But before I end, please allow me to just ask some important questions. Of course, I'll give you an opportunity to ask me any questions once I am done. Just a few reflection, questions that maybe you might want to reflect on. As an advocate, perhaps earning a reasonable income, are you happy with the way you're managing your money? That's a question that I would like to pose to you. Are you conscious of the fact that there is today and then there is tomorrow? Are you managing your money with tomorrow in mind, or are you busy dancing to a beautiful Kipepeo dance? Now, just a few hard questions to reflect on. In my last job, the one that I'm finishing, the term that I am finishing on Monday, in this job, I have been earning a decent income as a country director. But when I look back, I mismanaged money big time, big time. there were really lost opportunities. And I only became intentional at 47 after asking myself a series of very hard questions. So, and because of my own experience and what I went through, I created a challenge that I normally do, which is called Manage Your Money Challenge. And this challenge, I normally take people to help them reflect on the hard questions that inevitably help them to obtain the right discipline for managing their money, that then helps them to begin to use their income today to build a solid foundation for their future. So this Manage Your Money Challenge is something that I would like to create the opportunity for you to experience that challenge so that you can use your knowledge, the knowledge that you gain from the challenge, to break all the monuments and begin to set the foundation for your movement. It's a challenge that I would like to offer you guys, a 5-day challenge where we do a Zoom sessions every evening at a cost of 10,000 shillings per person. And I would like to offer this on the 18th, on the 14th on the week of the 14th to 18th August, because I have known the pain of not taking action and the pain of not being able to actually get in touch with my money. And a lot of us are really not in touch with our money. And sometimes when we ask these questions, they begin to actually sort of, blow your mind and sort of give you a light bulb moment to be able to help you think about. The last time I ran this challenge, I would like to just share a few things that some of the women that attended said. One of them said The challenge is the best thing that happened to me this week. This got me thinking hard, and now I am ready to steer my wheel in the right direction. Life becomes sobering when you realize you don't know what you have been doing with your money. On day two, Lucy, I have begun setting purposeful goals regarding my finances. This thing of YOLO has had to leave me kapsa. It's making me stop living a life on autopilot. As a business lady, it's easy to think that tomorrow will speak for itself and avoid listing everything. Looking at the assets and the liquidate and that can be liquidated quickly, list all expenses. Naskia wa. Purpose is all I have now. What I have had jana what I had jana was wamoyo. Can you forget the past? Make use of what you have now at hand. Thank you, Lucy. It has awakened me from a deep slumber. Thank God it came at this point of my life. I am now looking at everything financial critically. Moto sana. I'm scratching my head sana, asking myself, where was I in my 20s and 30s when I had no major responsibilities? Why was I not lucky enough to get a coach? Yesterday's class blew my mind away. Assets that I can liquidate, zitoke wapi. I survive on active income only. My chores, first of all, the reality of my bucket has shaken me out of utopia. Sijalala vyema. Even my appetite is affected. My emotions are all over the place. So I have reviewed and reviewed my income, expenditure, assets, and liabilities, and come to two conclusions. Expenses must reduce by any means necessary. My income, mostly active, must feed existing and new passive income sources. So surgery on expenses is inevitable. Developing new income streams is a must, though I don't know how yet. Now, those are some of the sentiments that people who attended this challenge sort of sent to me. So I just lifted to share with you. But the most important thing, I think, over and above everything that I have shared, is to understand that at the end of the day, you are the one who drives your financial vehicle. So I encourage you to drive it, sit on the driver's seat. Whatever mistakes, whatever monuments, whatever moments and monuments you have created, get into the in-between space and begin to move. Thank you.
So I listened that there's a floating decade between 30 and 40 years. So in the grand scheme of things, when you look at the tick box, you have a house, you've already done the house at 27, have already paid for it at 32, have paid up the circle. When we talk about cash flow, and I think sometimes we get lost, we think that having acquired some of these things that I don't want to say societal expects out of it, but I think that there's a pressure of uko na nyumba, do you have a car? Like you have a certain sort of tick box. But then now we're looking at another decade where now you're 40 to 50 or 50 to 60, because we had a discussion about retirement. Where does the cash flow come from? Like, where really does the cash flow? How do we get our mindsets from acquisition of these things that will not give us cash, liquid cash, and then move all the way to things that are going to give us cash, and really how to think about the whole equation?
Yeah, thanks, Modoni. I think you're right in talking about many times when we have so many pressures of society. But at the end of the day, I tell people this: pressure or no pressure, time is coming when your body cannot, when your body will not, your body, your head, your everything, you will not even want to go to that office, by the way. If you have read the cash flow quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, he talks about this quadrant of the way we earn our money as an employee, as a self-employed person, as a business owner, and as an investor. A lot of us are stuck in this other side of the quadrant, where we think because we are earning money from employment or we are earning money from self-employment. By the way, the difference between self-employment and employment is just that, or in one you're reporting to somebody else, in another you're reporting to yourself, or so it's really the same. I mean, it's where you're really putting in your time and you're selling your time for money, so to speak. Now, the conversation about this other quadrant of being an investor and being a business owner is something that we must really begin to ask ourselves, because even when you're an advocate and you have a law firm, at what point do you set up at what point do you bring yourself out and that the work will continue. At what point do you begin to think about the investments that you would have so that they can begin to have to bring in that cash flow? And I think a lot of us, that's where we really miss the point. So that as long as we are having a good life, we have a good car, we have a good home, we are doing life anyway, and we forget that there's a tomorrow, and we forget that there are these other things that we need to do to be able to continue generating, because the best money is money that is generated while you sleep. And those things are there, and so it's really, that's why we say that managing your money is what will give you the possibility to be able to put in the resources that help you to generate the money for your future needs, or for how you want to live your life in the future. So this thing of managing money is so critical. Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, because like for us as professionals, and professionals, I mean doctors, accountants, anybody who deems themselves as a professional, you can actually work until you're 75, because you're almost like the asset which generates the revenue. So how do you extricate yourself from the business so that other things earn you money, but I don't have to be there until I'm 75? Unless I'm being there at 75 because out of passion, I love doing law, I like arguing cases and things like that. So allow me to open the floor for the rest of the participants. Lucy Johnson is asking, kindly elaborate further the best strategies one can employ to come out of debt. What is the best strategy? Or are there any best strategies?
You see, that's why I said, when you get into the in-between space, that is when you actually like reflect and say, okay, mimi madeni yangu imefika huku. This is the mountain of debt that I have. How then do I begin to attack that debt? What do I have? What is it? How do I begin to develop a debt management or a debt repayment plan? Because you cannot work with what you don't know, right? You have to say, okay, this is the amount of debt I have. All right, this is the income I have. How am I going to begin, working? And the best way is to sort of work with what we call the snowballing technique, where you begin to attack your debt from the smallest, the smallest and the most urgent. So you have a debt management plan that lists the debts and says, sasa I also and so huyu amechelewa sana, huyu anakakaribu anikuje aninyonge, so you sort of list and see, and you are able to then say, what are the most urgent? What are the ones that I can renegotiate? What are the ones that I can restructure? You cannot do that unless you have been able to actually do what we are talking about in terms of being realistic about where you are, being realistic about your situation. That in-between situation. You saw that woman with a notebook up on your tuko. You actually just become realistic that, okay, you know what? My debt, this is the mountain of debt I have. Realistically, this is what I can be able to do. This is what I can be able to pay. This is the plan that I can be able to work on. And you attack it like a gazelle. You just keep attacking and working on it. Keep talking about, keep the vision in front of you. If the vision in front of you is to clear that debt, you will clear it. Sometimes we can be so swallowed with the fact of, I have so much debt and it becomes a monument. I don't know what to do. But the minute you become realistic about it, you begin to actually, make those, needle movements, paying one little thing after another. Even if you have paid the smallest debt, you celebrate, I have paid that. You move on to the next one. I have paid. And if there are people who you need to tell, if you owe people, you owe individuals, you owe the bank or whoever it is that you owe, face them, tell them, by the way, mimi, iko hivi ndivyo iko. And this is what I am, this is what I can promise, this is what I can deliver. And you continue, and you become a person of integrity to be able to meet, keep your word.
When we talk to debtors, because even for us from a legal perspective, we have to deal with the debtors. One of the key things that people don't do is renegotiate, or they don't come back to the table to say, look, the business is generating this much amount of income, so I need to be paying this amount of, part of the debt of this amount. So the moment you keep quiet, silence is not a solution. So silence will find you that now we've been asked to send a demand letter. But if you came on the table and said, look, I'll pay this amount of money over the next either 1 year or something like that. The best thing is to have a debt that is being paid as opposed to a debt that you've just kept quiet. And then you'll be asked to pay the whole of it at once. And then somebody's coming to auction your property for it. So silence is not a treatment for debt. Having conversations around it, even with your creditors or debtors, is how to go about it. I'm still opening the floor for more questions, kindly. Oh yes, there is a question for you, Lucy. I don't know whether you can see the chat session.
Yes, I can see the chat. How can one balance responsibility, especially when it comes to family responsibilities? How do you get to say no without feeling bad? Easy busy. Let me tell you, when you have a budget, you decide a particular proportion, a percentage is what I will use for supporting family. Because I mean, we are here and we know that maybe, if, for example, if you're supporting your parents, you cannot just say no to your parents. I mean, you can empower them, of course, or your sisters and brothers or whoever it is. But the best way is to look, that's why we are talking about managing, that thing of manage your money. Because then you're able to be realistic and say, for me, I can only afford to support my people with 10,000 shillings or with 20,000 shillings, whatever that amount is, whatever percentage of that amount is. And you decide, all right, this is what is available. This is who I am going to support. This is how I am going to support them. By the way, I always talk about give people the fish rod, not the fish. If they are of sober minds, able-bodied, surely you can give them the fish rod so that you are supporting them to be able to stand on their feet, as opposed to them becoming completely dependent on you. For parents, is a different ballgame altogether, because for parents, they might be ailing, they might, of course, their age and everything, it might not be possible for you to talk about a fish rod with the parents, you know, depending on where they are and depending on their age. But for your brothers and sisters and other relatives, surely, unless maybe they are in school, for example. I remember when I was, you know, still, I think, either building or something, my father calls me and tells me, my sister was in class 8. So my father calls me and tells me, oh, by the way, you know, she is going to Form 1. That is in December. Of course, children are going to Form 1 in January. Of course, I mean, I asked him, but Daddy, you knew that she was going to go to Form 1. Kwani what happened? Oh, aga sijui crops hazikufanya vizuri, aga what. Just lack of planning, to be honest. And that was my dad. And I told him, you know, I am going to pay school fees for my sister. However, I am not going to pay the school fees for second term. What I am going to do, I'll pay school fees for this first term. And then I want you to tell me, how do you want me to support you so that next term you have school fees? So akaniambia, ninunulie fertilizer, ndio apande vitu zake, sijui nifanyie hivi na hivi. And that's what I did. So I was able to empower my dad to be able to pay school fees for my sister, because of course he was still strong and all. So it's really a question of how do you also treat and train people to actually give them the fish rod other than giving them the fish, unless it is completely necessary. But even when it is completely necessary, put a particular amount that you say, this is what I am going to use to support. You can never solve you can never solve the problems of the whole world. Never, you can't. So decide who it is that you are going to support and with what. But most importantly, remember, give people the fish rod and not the fish.
There's a comment from Mary. So she's just supporting what you've said. She says, thank you for this knowledge sharing. I always let family members know that I can support them to the best of my ability. Put aside emotions and have that discussion. Thank you, Lucy. Teach them how to fish. So the question that I had for you was, sometimes when we hear about you need to have the right mindset, you need to do X, Y, Z. If somebody was trying to recover from a financial mistake, like what would be your key 3 basics that you'd say, do this and do that? Like just 3, like you really want to have them, not in an abstract format, but one, when you realize at 47 that these are the problems I was making, you've gone into your moments where you're thinking about it. But what were the key things that you started doing that you'd say 1, 2, 3 is the key things that I started doing when I saw all this happening?
Number 1, I had to get somebody to, I realized that I was deficient in terms of my knowledge when it comes to money.
Yeah.
So I sought to get, to learn. I sought to learn so that I could discover what I didn't know, you know. So I paid for coaching, for sure. I did pay for coaching, because then I was able to actually say, you know, what are these things that I didn't know? And I was able to do, to learn and be able to get myself back on track. That's one thing that I did. I think the other thing that I did was to really come up with my, I mean, you know, people are different, but the whole thing of coming up with specific goals that then sort of move you to the next level. And as I have said, just being clear about where you are and where you want to go. Because unless you are clear about where you are, so that you're able to say, okay, this is where I am, realistically, this is what I can do, and this I can't do, this I can handle, this I can't handle. You know, that there is nothing ideal about that. I mean, it's a practical tip to just say, this is where I am and this is where I'm going to go. And of course, the other thing is getting someone to just hold you accountable to the things that you say that you will do. Yeah. I had in my circle my two friends who we call ourselves the pace setters, who I would just go and tell them, by the way, guys, this is what I am going to do. Please hold me accountable to this. This is what I have decided. And we would meet often, and they would tell me, okay, you said you would do this. Where are you? You know? Yeah. Yeah.
I think one final comment from Marianne Masheru. She says, thank you so much, Lucy, for the insightful presentation and spot on. And just remind all the participants that Lucy has this manage your money challenge, which I would, even for me, advocate that if you're having questions, I think this is a very great challenge where you can get to and break some of these monuments that we keep creating for ourselves. Thank you so much, Lucy, for your time and for sharing the nuggets of wisdom with us.